Hi everyone, thank you for joining. Welcome to VOCEL's final masterclass. We are going to give folks a couple minutes to log on and then we'll get started. So while you're waiting, feel free to introduce yourself into the chat box. I am going to do that as an example here. You can tell us your name, you can just say hey. If you have a little one at home, you can tell us how old they are. If you're coming from a specific organization or a school, you can tell us that, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. And make sure when you do that, that you click the little arrow next to all panelists in the chat box. When you click that down arrow, you can select all panelists and attendees, and that will allow you to make sure your message goes to all of us. Otherwise, it will just go to Karina and I. So make sure if you're introducing yourself in the chat that you select all panelists and attendees before you write your message. And we are going to give, like I said, just a couple minutes for folks to log on, and then we will go ahead and get started. We have a couple 3-year-olds in the house, literally in our homes. Anyone else have little ones at home? Tell us how old they are so we can make sure that Karina and I cater some of our comments to the ages of your kiddos. So anyone else who's joining, I see that we have a good number of you already signed on right on time. So go for it, introduce yourself, tell us about your kids. Great, we have some 5-year-old, 2-year-old, 7-year-old, 6-year-old, 4-year-old. Awesome. And, okay, another 3-year-old, great. Awesome to see people come in from all different fields too. Hi Edith, good morning, good afternoon I mean. Great to see so many of you here. We'll give just one more minute and then we are going to get started. We're going to jump in. So we have a packed hour today. So if you're just joining, you can go ahead and put your name into the chat box or any ages of your kiddos. If you have kiddos at home, tell us if you're coming from a specific field or organization or school, let us know that as well. And Hannah just put this in the chat box. If you want your chat to go to everyone, make sure that you click the little down arrow and select all panelists and attendees. But I see all your introductions, so great to know who's here. And we are, it's wonderful to see people coming from all over the country to log in for this. Thank you for being here. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And bear with me for just a moment. Let's see if we can get this to go back. Hold on one moment, folks. Let's try that again. And let's do it from the beginning. Oh, okay. We'll flip back manually. So as we get started, I first want to just thank everyone for carving out the time and joining today. I think it's great to see that we have a lot of folks who are back again, but then also a lot of new names as well. So really happy that you're here, especially because we have Karina Lane here as our guest presenter today. She's going to be sharing her expertise and practical guidance with us soon. And I also want you to know that today is the final masterclass in our series. So this was a new initiative for VOCEL. We hadn't done this before sort of the pandemic hit, and we realized there was an opportunity to connect with folks at home and talk about topics that are of interest to you and also of interest to us, and bring in other guest experts from the field. So it feels a little sad to say that today is the final masterclass in our series, but we do still have one more event. So I want to make a special plug for the VOCEL Early Expressions Soiree. Since VOCEL opened, we've always hosted an annual fundraiser, and as a nonprofit, we really rely on those donations to keep us going, to keep growing our programs and bringing our services to more families around Chicago. And in fact, this week is really special because it is the first week of our program year for our core program, which is the Child Parent Academy. So last school year, we partnered with 14 schools and community organizations around Chicago to bring the Child Parent Academy. And this year we added 6 new school partners. So we officially have 20 cohorts up and running, which I applaud my team for. I think to grow a program amidst a pandemic is no small feat. And we really rely on donations and grants to help us keep the programs running. So on Thursday, October 15th from 6 to 7 p.m., we are going to bring together virtually, of course, as many people as possible, VOCEL supporters and folks who are new to VOCEL. And the event is free to attend, so there'll be opportunities to donate once you're watching, but completely free to log on and attend, and you'll get to meet some of our VOCEL families, hear from one of our Chicago Public Schools school leaders, and just learn more about VOCEL's work and the impact it has. So please sign up, spread the word to your networks. It's just 1 hour, so maybe it's a night with your roommates or a date night or a family event, whatever works for you. And there even is an option when you register, I think just until October 1st. So almost done with this kind of special option, but you can select if you want to receive a cheese and charcuterie platter from local restaurant Tempesta Market. So if you want to kind of make a fancy evening of it at home, that's an option for you too. So with that said, I want to move on to today's topic. And first, a big thank you to Lindy and Michael Kaiser and Lindy Hirschzone and Chris Coetzee, because both of their families are presenting sponsors for this Masterclass series. So their support is allowing us to bring these awesome guest speakers and these workshops sort of right into each of your homes and into our homes. So I want to give a big shout out and thank you to them. And then next, a quick intro to VOCEL, since like I said, we do have a few newcomers on this masterclass. So I want to share about the work that we do and why. Our mission is to help ensure every child has the foundation to learn, grow, and lead. So we work towards that with 2Gen programs that strengthen and support the adults and the environments that help young children thrive. So we think about those adults as any grown-up that's important to the child, the parents, grandparents, caregivers, teachers, school principals. And we really believe that grown-ups who are raising young children are those kiddos' first teachers. And so we're committed to getting the tools and knowledge and support into the hands of those people so that they can put it to work with their little ones. I'm Jessie Ilhart. I co-founded VOCEL, and I lead our program and innovation work. As I said in the chat, I'm also mom to a 3-year-old James. And I think early childhood educators talk often about the power of play, but it's less commonly discussed among people who are raising young children. And I think that I've seen and heard that there are a lot of misconceptions out there that for children to learn, they need fancy toys, or they need Leapfrog, or they need an educational app or a TV show. And play can sometimes be thought of as actually like what comes after the learning. So this idea of get your work done or your learning done and then you can play. But actually what we know from decades of research is that for young children, play is really where that brain work happens. And when children's brains form those connections and learn, that happens during play. And so I think this quote really exemplifies that. So Jordan Shapiro says, think of playtime like an innovation lab where tomorrow's civilization is being actively designed. And as we go through today's chat, I think Karina's points will reflect this too. We want to keep in mind how we can create space and create the conditions for play where children really have this opportunity to explore, or they can navigate, they can solve problems, or they can design solutions. And when they do that over and over again, when they do it independently or when they do it with peers or with you as a grown-up in their life, I just think of the mindset that instills in a person, right? That I try something, it doesn't work. I try something different, I get creative, I can figure out hard problems. And so I think of it as really a gift that we can give to the children in our lives to grow up with those being the messages that we're sort of automatically telling ourselves, or that they will automatically tell themselves. So that's really what we're here to talk about today. And I'm going to first spend a few minutes talking about why the early education community tends to agree that play is the best way for young children to learn. And then I'm going to bring on Karina, who will talk about how children play and some play activities that you can use to promote some of those problem-solving skills that I was just mentioning. And then we'll close out with Q&A. So don't be shy. Please start putting those questions in the chat box right off the bat. Even if you think your question might get answered along the way, that's fine. We will handle that later. So pop it in there. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen so that we can know, what you want to get out of today. And as a reminder for anyone who hasn't been on our master classes, we want you to be present. We don't want you to have to stress about taking notes. So know that the recording from today will be shared. And we also have a diverse group among us, which means that we're coming from really a variety of life experiences. We have parents joining us, grandparents, we have some teachers joining us. So please share in the chat box. If you have a related idea to what we're talking about, pop that into the chat box. Or if you just want to say like, yay, yes, I agree with that, we welcome that too, and hope that we can all sort of learn from each other through this time. So while I know that we're all, unique and have individual goals for the children in our lives and for ourselves, I think for the most part, it's fairly universal that we want our children to be happy, smart, and successful, and to be successful in whatever they choose to do or what they want to pursue. I'm curious if you do open up that chat box to hear more about this from you. Do these goals resonate when you think of your children? Are there other things that when you think of the kids in your care, whether it be in your home, in your daycare, in your school, things that you want for them or things that you hope for them? Go ahead and pop those into the chat box so that we can kind of ground ourselves with that and think about play relative to what you really want for your kids. To be kind. Great. To develop positive character traits. I want my child on the autism spectrum to intermingle with my other two girls. Great. So getting at some of those social skills. What else feels important? Any others? The concept of sharing. Great. Yes. So getting more specific about some of those social skills. Independence. Awesome. Yeah. I think about also communication, right? I want my son to be able to communicate with peers or to speak his mind about things. Great. So I imagine that, even though we have some of these diverse hopes and dreams for our kids, but also some that are shared, one of the great things we're going to talk about today is that play can help us get to all of these goals. I really cannot underscore enough what a powerful tool it is for learning and development. And I see here that a couple people are saying in the chat to keep kids engaged and enjoy learning. Yes, if we want them to enjoy learning, play is 100% one of the best tools that we can use. So moving on here, if I can get my screen to move for you all. There we go. I would go as far as to say that for young children, play is the ideal vehicle for learning. I do want to make a caveat here that every child is unique and children learn differently. But nonetheless, I think in terms of my experience in the early education field, I've seen that play works for the large majority of children. And three reasons why it's really great for learning that I'm going to touch on. First, it really sustains children's attention. And we know that those attention spans are short when kids are young. Second, in play situations, children are, or at least they really should be in the lead. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And third, that play promotes not only those school readiness skills, but really those life success skills. So some of the things that you all were naming in the chat box. So first, play sustaining children's attention, right? Young children are notorious for having short attention spans, and play is one of the best ways to really stretch that attention and that focus. So almost every child will spend more time on the floor playing with cars or dolls or blocks than a child who is sitting at a table with a coloring book sheet. So really giving them something that they're interested in, that's sort of their speed, that allows them the space to move, to explore, helps to stretch out that attention span, which is great also for parents, caregivers, grown-ups at home, because with all the pressures of today, we want to find activities that are going to really allow our children to engage for a longer period of time. Second, we know that in play situations, it really allows for children to lead the way. So I think for this, I find it helpful to think about how much as adults we get to control, right? We get to control what we eat, when we go to the bathroom, what we wear that day, who we see, what time we wake up, right? Sometimes we might not wake up at the time we really wish we could wake up, but we get to control it, right? We set that alarm. Young children control very little. And, sometimes it may seem like they're the ones that are in control of everything. But when we think about those sort of day-to-day choices, they're really not making as many of them, not nearly as close to as many as we are as adults. So giving them the opportunity to be in control of their play is great for their independence, which I know someone talked about in the chat box. It helps them feel more at ease. So think about all those power struggles that you have about eating vegetables, or, child needing to go to the bathroom before you leave the house, whatever it might be. When they're in a play situation, you really get to skip those power struggles. And that lowers the child's anxiety, but also lowers our anxiety as adults. And then third, play develops these foundational life skills. So this one is probably most important, right? That play really promotes the learning and development that we want to happen in our children. And so think about these 4 skills, right? For kids to be able to thrive in life in many of the ways that you said, we think that they need to have communication, empathy, creativity, and confidence, right? So skills like knowing their numbers or letters, or comparing sizes of objects, or rhyming, those can come through play. We're going to talk about that. But those will also come with school instruction and exposure to some of those academics. But these 4 skills on the screen, they take a lot more time, and they matter for everything else, right? In order to demonstrate some of that academic knowledge, children have to have these communication skills. They have to have that confidence. And so these are some of those, we think of them really as foundational. So through play situations, children learn to communicate. They communicate with themselves, right? They talk out loud. They learn to communicate with others. They get to practice empathy and other social skills, and they're able to stretch themselves creatively and try out new ideas and experiment. I think it's one of my greatest joys when my son is playing and I hear him say, like, wait, I have an interesting idea. And just that hearing that like light bulb has gone off, right? That he has a new idea, something that I didn't plant there for him to follow through on, makes me feel excited in thinking about the foundation that that's providing. Plus, I think, taking the skill of confidence alone, the last one on this list, as parents, it would be impossible for us to select the perfect learning worksheet for our child's exact moment in development. And the chances of choosing one that's maybe a little too tough or a little too easy, that's pretty high likelihood. But with play, because of how it's set up where children lead the way, they play at the exact right level of challenge for themselves. So again, it takes that pressure off us. We can know that with play situations, they're going to play at the level that they need to. It's not up to us to define that learning or set that expectation. And then it becomes a huge confidence builder for them. So Not just that play will keep our kids busy for longer or that we'll have fewer power struggles, but actually that it is the more effective way to teach young children the massive amount that we really want them to learn, and that young children do learn in the span of just a couple short years. And one more framework that I want to share with you, I think this is helpful because I want to be sure that our discussion about the power of play and the benefits of play doesn't lead anyone to believe that play is the only effective method of learning or the only way that we learn. I think that, contrary to play, which is typically spontaneous and child-selected and doesn't have a specific learning goal in mind, right? So in play situations, we don't go into it thinking like, I'm going to learn my letters through this play situation, or the child is going to learn their letters through this play situation. Maybe that happens as a result, but that's not the specific learning goal that we are targeting in that play situation. On the contrary to that, work can be used to describe a task or activity that a child might do where there is a specific goal. So that could be a worksheet with the child where they're practicing writing a letter of the alphabet. Or work could be an activity where a child is being shown flashcards of numbers and asked to count to that number, or asked to recognize, what number is this, right? So in each of these categories, work, play, and open-ended play, children are doing some heavy lifting. They're doing some thinking, some learning. And in the work category, the heavy lifting is very focused. It's very focused on one discrete skill typically, and so limited in scope to that skill. The beauty of play is that it allows kids to develop in so many more ways. And you can see that from this slide, that play opens up and fosters learning and development that's more related to those life skills like communication, social skills. And then really briefly want to differentiate between play and open-ended play because this is nuanced. So with straightforward play, it's typically a more common scenario or items we might expect to be used in a certain context. So for example, playing with trains, or a doll in a baby bottle, or a pretend kitchen with plates and plastic food, right? Whereas with open-ended play, the materials are typically used in a variety of ways, or they're combined in non-traditional ways. So an example of this might be a shoebox that's filled with sand and spoons and measuring cups and maybe some toy cars, right? So it's more of a, here are some materials, explore and see what happens type of play. And the difference there in children's heavy lifting or their learning is really interesting because in those more typical play scenarios, you'll often see the communication skills and social skills on display because children are more sure of already how to use those materials together, right? How to use a play kitchen, how to play with a doll and a baby bottle. So they're not spending their brain space on figuring that out. Instead, their focus is able to be on maybe how to interact with a child, like you were saying in the chat box, how to interact between siblings. Or maybe they're gonna talk out loud about what they're cooking in the play kitchen. And so they're gonna focus on those communication skills. I think with some of those exploratory open-ended play situations, we're going to see children play more quietly sometimes. They might not be talking as much. Sometimes we'll see children playing more independently. And their energy, their focus is more so on the exploration, right? So how to combine these materials, how to solve new problems. And for me, I think this framework is really empowering because then I can think about my child and for a specific day or a specific week, where I want to focus, right? Do I want to focus right now on his problem solving skills, his creativity? Okay, then we might go with Play-Doh and pipe cleaners. Whereas if I want to focus on sharing or conversation skills, maybe we lay out a blanket with those paper plates and cups and plastic utensils. So that quick framework hopefully can be helpful for you as it was for me. And finally, before I hand it off to Karina, I want to acknowledge that we're living in this unprecedented time. Play was always important for little ones, but it's even more important now because we know that there has been this massive disruption to our own routines and also our children's. And we know that play decreases anxiety because there's no right or wrong way to do it. And it's a great venue for connection. So we know that connection decreases kids' anxiety and it decreases our own anxiety. And really that relationship that can blossom through play can act as a buffer for stress for our kids. So getting out some Play-Doh, playing with our child, it's good for their anxiety. It's also really good for our own. And luckily we have Karina here today. She's going to share more great ideas and frameworks that you can use to support powerful play at home. So I am going to stop sharing my screen so that Karina can come on with her video. And I'm going to introduce you to her for just a moment. There she is. So Karina is a master teacher at Educare of West DuPage, which is an early childhood program that really serves as a model of excellence for full day year-round early care and education programs nationwide. And after earning her BA in Human Development and a master's in early childhood education from Erickson Institute, Karina did not stop there. She has certifications as an infant specialist and also as an infant and early childhood mental health specialist. So needless to say, she has a wealth of knowledge. And then I would also be remiss not to mention that she is mom to a fellow 3-year-old who she refers to as her sassy pants. And she's born and raised on the south side of Chicago, a proud Afro-Latina. We are just really thankful, Karina, for you being here with us today and sharing your wisdom. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. So just like many of you all, before I even share my slides, obviously we're all living in a pandemic. So during, the height of everything, I was definitely at home with my 3-year-old. So putting together this presentation is definitely from my own experience, both professionally, educationally, and as a parent. So I think I'm hoping that you all will share with me and some of the things that you already know and some experiences. And then just as a caution, you are going to see some pictures and videos in the presentation. They are of my own child. So I definitely have permission to share pictures and videos of my own child. But I think just being authentic in sharing my own child and my own experiences certainly helps in the topic, which is so important. And she just turned 3 last weekend, so she's a fresh, brand new 3-year-old. So let me just get my presentation here and then I'll get started. All right, so in my part of the presentation, I'm really just going to talk about how kids play, how parents and caregivers, and I'll probably interchangeably use both parents and caregivers, but anyone who's around the child, teachers, all of that to support play. And then some ideas, obviously not, a complete list, but some ideas of play-based learning, which are really important to just know and be aware of. So before we get into that part, I just kind of wanted to bring you some numbers and why play is just so important. So by the age of 6, children's language skills are pretty, presentable and very well developed. So this is why everything that we do is so important in the first couple of years. The brain is mostly developed by the age of 5. And we have so many brain cells that in this age range between up to age 5, that they're making those connections, and those brain connections are called synapses. But it's really important to make and help create those connections for children, because if we don't create those connections for them, the brain begins to prune or kind of drop off. So we don't use those brain cells, we don't really make those connections, and then we no longer have them. So it's so important that we do our best by children, especially young children, to help them learn and develop to their highest potential. That's been the motivation behind my work, and certainly now as a parent, well, for the last 3 years, has certainly been my motivation to really help and support our daughter really grow and develop. So I just wanted to share some of that, not the really dry anatomy information, but just something that's useful to you all. So how do kids play? Luckily, it's part of natural development, so children naturally will play. There are stages to development, so it's really important to be aware of that information, just so that as caregivers, we're aware of what is typical and what is developmentally appropriate at various ages, so that we know where kids are coming from. So I think in all of this, and again, using myself as an example, this is really important for me to remember when I was at home trying to work with my then 2.5-year-old, of just really understanding where she was in her development overall, and then what stage she was in play. So here I broke down a couple of the stages of play. Um, so children birth to about age 2, they play alone with their toys. That's typically what's expected. So oftentimes, and I'll get into this a little bit later, parents of children who are under 2.5, they're like, well, my kid doesn't share. And well, they're not supposed to under, at a certain age, and it comes a little bit later, but children, they play alone with their toys, they're figuring things out, and that's what the work is at that point. So then around 2.5 to 3.5 years old, you start to see children playing next to other children, whether they're the same age, older, siblings, whatever the case is, but they're playing on their own with maybe similar materials or with their own materials, but they're playing next to them, and that's completely okay. You may see them observing the child and see what they're doing to kind of get some of those ideas. But parallel play is what occurs around 2.5 to 3.5 years old, and it's completely okay. So still at this age, sharing is not what is expected, so it's okay. And again, that's usually the top thing I hear from parents and caregivers, is that their child is not sharing. They're still not supposed to. So then around 3.5, 4.5 years is finally when we start to see some sharing taking place. And it's not to say that children aren't going to share earlier on, but just in understanding what that means for children, this is kind of when we'll start to see children play with others. They may share the materials, but right now they're still following their own storylines. So if you reflect back on the children that you have in your care, or maybe in your own childhood, this is when you start to see okay, you're gonna be the doggy, I'm gonna be the mommy. You start to see some of that, they're called schemas, but they're storylines that children develop, and this is what happens at this age. So then around 4.5 to 5.5 years old, this is kind of at the highest level of play, where we really start to see children working together and really assigning those roles and taking turns and having some negotiation in what play is taking place. So this is really when, and I'm coming from the experience of working here at Educare, when I see in the classroom where they're really interested in having a grocery store, and you see children, somebody's a cashier and someone is, bagging up the groceries, and you really start to see that high level of play. And this is also at all of these stages, really, but really where you start to see the cooperative play that goes on with children, and you're hearing the language that's coming about. So we're really able to build in some very specific language. So usually around the 3 year to 5.5 year age range is really my favorite place to play, because all of those ideas really start to come alive for children, and it's just really fun. So then after about 6 years, we start to see children have games with rules. And that's when games with winners and losers, and the children often make up the rules. So they may not be the real rules, but the children games with rules, I'm sorry, are really important at this age. And this is also when children's understanding of the social rules important to their own culture, their own home environment, neighborhood, all of that really comes into play. So again, I wanted to go back a little bit to sharing. So as I shared, sharing doesn't really kind of come alive until that kind of 3-4 year age range. Um, and that's when children really understand that things, belongings, other people have them too. So they're able to kind of come into that mindset and are able to understand that. Um, they also understand that toys should be respected. And it's really important for caregivers to not make children share special objects. So if they're stuffies, blankets, all of those things, it's really important that we keep those safe. Um, and also at this age, children come to understand that other people have thoughts and feelings that are different than their own. So in the psychology or child development world, that is really known as theory of mind. So understanding that other people have thoughts that are different than their own, and that's okay. So this is why sharing doesn't really come about until about this age, because this is a stage in brain development and a child's development that really comes alive for them. So again, these stages are of course variable. Children can meet these sooner or later, depending on where they are in their development, but it's really important as caregivers that we really understand where children are coming from and where their development is, to really attune how we're meeting them to be able to meet their needs. Oops, sorry, it went a little fast. So I just stuck this quote in here, is that play is our brain's favorite way of learning. So as Shashi shared earlier, children are learning through their play. There's different ways to make sure that that is happening. So it's really important for us as caregivers to ensure that we support that and we create the environment and the space for that to happen. So on this slide, I just shared some very just common and openly available toys that kids should have at different ages and stages. So this is all available from 0 to 3. So that's a really great website for caregivers, parents, all of that, to look at resources, to understand what's happening at these ages and why certain toys are important at these ages. So from birth to 6 months, although I listed some toys there that are important, caregivers are the most important toy or thing that we should play with. It's at all of these ages, honestly, but from those initial first 6 months, that's really where attachment is taking place, and really when babies are really coming into this world and we're really starting to see what they see and making sense of the world for them. So really having a lot of that face-to-face time and holding baby close to face, narrating different sounds that they hear, doing all of that really takes place at this age. Then around 6 to 12 months, we start to build on what occurred in those first 6 months. So a lot of the same toys, but just adding a level more. So adding musical instruments, supporting children in using their fine motor skills and developing those skills. So they're able to use knob puzzles and stacking rings and cups and doing all of those things. Around this age also is when children are being introduced to more table foods. So that is certainly a toy too. Meal times are important. They're part of every culture. So it's really important for children to understand how that looks in their own household, so that we can support them in learning, but it's also a great time for children to learn and develop skills. So then 12 to 24 months, the true toddler age, again, we build on a lot of the same materials that children had earlier on, but we take it up a notch. It's really important to expose them to different materials. I've also included here crayons and paper. I think most times people don't introduce those until later, but it's really important to allow children to just have paper of any kind and just tear it up. That's a fine motor skill, and it's really important to introduce them to the material before we expect them to write their names or anything like that. I also included tunnels, a box. We don't really need to buy many things. I don't know about any of you, but how often have you bought all of these amazing toys and then all the kid cares about is a box that it all came in? So it's really important to keep those boxes there because they promote so much learning and development. And then lastly, just for the sake of time in the slide, I included 24 to 36 months. But again, building off of a lot of the same materials that we talked about in the earlier ages, but then also adding on memory games and puzzles and blocks and shape sorters, stringing beads. So working on a lot of those fine motor skills. I often tell parents that if we want to support a child in learning how to write their name, they can't go from nothing to writing their name. They really have to work on developing those fine motor skills, which comes from playing with puzzles and stringing bead toys and things of that nature. Play-Doh is amazing. So using those things, and also just using what you have in your own home environment to suffice as a toy. It doesn't have to be an actual toy. Pots and pans, all those things that you have in your home anyway, regardless if it's a toy, can often serve as a toy. So it's really important to see how we can use those in a safe manner, and also really tuning in and taking into open-ended materials. So paper towel tubes, coffee cans, and formula cans, all of those are toys. So you don't need to spend tons of money on materials, because oftentimes you have those materials in your own homes anyway. So they can serve as materials to really support children in learning and growing. So myself, I remember playing with pots and pans with my mom in the kitchen and learning how to count with beans. So not a toy, but that's how I remember learning how to count. So just another quote from Mr. Rogers, of course. Play gives children a chance to practice what they're learning. So oftentimes, and it certainly has been my experience, is that I'm able to see what children know, what they are hearing, what they're exposed to, all of that through their play. So just know that that is a wonderful, play is a vehicle for learning, no matter what it looks like. So then now I'm going to show some videos of my own child, like I shared earlier, of how, and most of these videos are during COVID, during the height of COVID when I was still home, working from home with her. So these are just some examples of things that I did to support my child in learning. So this first video that I'm going to show you is just myself asking her some W questions. So what, why, when, how, like all of those types of questions are really important in supporting children in helping them think about their thinking. Well, how do you know that? Where are you going? Those types of things really help children understand and talk about those things. So bear with me. Who are you talking to? Oh, okay, what did she say?
First just gotta go to the cutter and to the mat and then into the boat.
Okay. And where are you going today?
Into the boat with you.
Into the boat with who?
You.
Oh, okay. So there you just hear me asking her those what questions. I couldn't even fully understand what she was saying at the time, but I was trying my best to just make sure I was understanding what she was saying and asking her those questions to really think about those things. The next video, you're gonna just see her reading a book.
Snowman. We have some good things. Sticks. Goes nose. Carrot. One button. Two buttons. Three buttons. Four eyes. 4, 6, and 2 legs. 2 legs here. It's crystal. 10 greens. These were friend. And this is on a clip. This is the mat. This is on a.
So I just showed you that video. Of course, this is all like real life experiences, but just I didn't have to read the book to her. This is a familiar thing. It's Frozen. But she's able to tell me what she hears or what she knows in the story and make her own scripts of those things. And then this last video that I'm going to show you is of her probably, this is definitely last year, so she was definitely a lot younger, but she's playing out her own experiences with a baby doll. So she was a lot smaller here, but I'll let you listen.
Dummy, 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 dummy. Dummy, 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 dummy. Shark, shark, a shark, a shark.
So in that video, she's playing out her own experience of putting on Jimmy. She has a baby doll and her own pajamas that she pulled out of the laundry basket. And she's trying to put those pajamas on the baby doll and then switched over to trying to find a shirt. So in the last two videos I showed you, you don't hear me asking her a lot of questions, but they're just her playing out her own experiences and showing what she knows. And of course, these are just videos that I happen to have in my phone. I did not prepare them for this presentation. But children can tell you things, so it's really important to really support their language and their experiences through their play. So then I have just some more real life examples during our COVID closure that we were at home of how you can continue to just support learning. So taking advantage of print that's outside to talk about what those letters are and if your child recognizes any of those. It rained one day, so we were jumping in puddles, which you'll see here in this video. So just jumping in puddles, but we can really talk about math and science and cause and effect. Where does the rain come from? Why is that puddle there? And the last picture here, we can talk about the garbage truck and why it's here and where's the garbage going, and how all the machinery works. So you can take advantage of any situation to really infuse the learning without it having to be so, sit down at a desk and let's learn. Let's not do that and really take advantage of the environment that we have around us to really support children in understanding the world around them. And another just caveat about the pictures and videos that you're seeing, this is all, as Jessie alluded to, play is connection. So even myself, I was forgetting that it was really important for my child to play and really important for myself, even with all the experience and knowledge and all of that, to really sit down and connect with my child to play. So I really took it upon myself to breaks during the day between Zoom calls and those things, to just go outside, to find ways to play with her because she really needed that connection. Her world was changed just as much as our world was changed. So it's really important to have time for those connections to support her and her natural, 2.5-year-old mind. So as caregivers, how can we support play? We need to give children space and opportunity. We need to provide them with safe places to be able to explore what they know, what they think. We need to provide them with language. So there are times and spaces where we can just be quiet and just allow children to tell us what they're thinking. But it's really important for children to hear language. And the most important time for children to learn any language is when they're really little. So it's really important for us to do that and provide them opportunities to learn 2, 3, 4 languages when they're really young. So narrating everything that's happening around them, what's going to happen to them. No one likes to be just taken from place to place without knowing what's going on. So starting off with, okay, Morgan, I'll use her example. Is it okay if we change your diaper? And even as a baby, she couldn't always respond to me with words, but she could tell me whether it was okay or maybe she wasn't ready yet. So just being really respectful to children and asking them questions, asking them their opinions, but also narrating everything that's going on in the world around them because they are trying to make sense of all of that. And then another thing that I just added here is just allowing children curiosity and letting them take risks. I'm a huge believer in allowing children to take risks. So I'm definitely out of, Morgan's two parents, I'm definitely the one who wants her to climb trees and rocks and to get dirty and messy and do all of those things because I really want her to make sense of the world around her. So between my husband and I definitely am the one who kind of lets things go a little bit longer to see if she can figure it out. And I certainly ask her, how are you going to get down from that? If she gets on something that may be a little risky or a little too high, I'm certainly the parent who asks those questions. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to get my slide to move, but it's not. Oh, it went way to the end. Okay. So then I just have some quick pictures of, again, what learning was happening during the closure. So the first picture is her in her room with shoes, but here she's learning math concepts of things that match. So which shoes are the same? So those are math concepts, and it's with materials that are already in the home. And then another picture of her looking at dominoes with my husband. Again, math concepts, colors. There's so many things that can happen out of things that are already naturally occurring in the household. So we did a lot of cooking during the closure, but again, a lot of math, science, language that's taking place, and naturally occurring routines. So we had to have dinner. So in the first picture, you see her putting some butter on empanadas. You see her counting out potatoes, and that's all with me in the kitchen. And I, those were naturally occurring things. So making sure that there's safe ways that she can participate, but this is something that she really enjoyed. So I made sure to create opportunities and space for it to happen, but to also really develop her skills. You see her baking some muffins. So a lot of math, science, and then in one of the pictures, you see her eating next to one of her baby dolls. So again, naturally occurring experience, but she's making sure that her baby doll has a meal just like she has a meal. And then, let's see if my slide changes. Moved a little fast. Another, just showing her with my mom in the home of just making her a meal out of sticks and leaves. So using her imagination to really pour up some tea, I think, and preparing a meal, and my mom being engaged with her around those things. So it's really important to really support that in the natural environments that they happen, but just making sure that we're really supporting children and their natural things. And then you also see the floor model TV at my parents' house. So then another quote here is that almost all creativity involves purposeful play by Abraham Maslow. So if you have taken any psychology course, you've probably heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's really important. We can't really support children in learning letters and math and all those things if we don't really support children's basic needs with food, water, security, safety, all of those things. Children are not going to be ready to play and learn if they don't have those basic needs met. So making sure that children are in the right mindset to play by those basic needs being taken care of, but also having those social emotional needs met too. I often tell teachers here at Educare, a child is not going to learn anything that you have to say if we haven't really supported their social and emotional needs. So if their sense of security is what needs to happen first, that's what we're going to work on first. I don't care if a child leaves our program and doesn't know how to write their name, if they don't know how to enter groups and play, if they don't feel secure as individuals. So I say that every single year when we're working on a child who may have some individual differences or challenges, we really need to attack and support those social emotional needs before we get to everything else. So that's usually my take on that. And then the last little picture here, if it'll change and go my way, is just saying that play is messy, but the rewards are worth the cleanup. So you see my daughter playing with shaving cream, good old fashioned shaving cream on the floor. And then, her just cleaning up with me, probably on some other random occasion. And then you see my dog right next to her. But she saw me mopping the floor and she wanted to mop the floor. So children mimic everything that we do, and it's important that we provide them the space and opportunity to really do that. And during this time, it was really important for me to remember that, so I could really support my own now 3-year-old. She just turned 3 last week, in doing that and learning throughout the time too. So that's all I have.
Great. Thank you so much, Karina. Some of those examples you shared in pictures, I hope they were helpful for other folks on the call. I know I was watching some of those photos and just, right, the wheels are spinning, right, of all the different things you can do. And especially you talked about with naturally occurring routines, things that, you know, parents, any grown-ups at home already have so much going on and so much on their plates, right? So to not have to worry about planning something big, but figuring out where can play fit in and learning fit in already in my day-to-day with the materials I have at home. A couple questions came in that I think relate to that. There's one question here in the chat box about the value of talking. You talked about language. So talking as compared to children watching content on screens. And so the comment here, right, says, I'm seeing some fun looking content that my friends' kiddos are watching. I'm worried my kiddo is staying behind. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like the value of conversation versus hearing that language on a screen?
Yeah, and I think I look at it both ways. As a working parent who sometimes needs to get dinner cooked, maybe without the child in the kitchen or whatever the case is. So my take on that is to always make sure that if they're watching something that's digital on TV, that as a parent, you're aware of what's there. So you're curating that information for them. So it's really like, so they're getting something out of it. So I know Umizoomi, I know Dora the Explorer, I know all of those things because my child has to watch it sometimes. And I don't think that there's any harm in that, but just ensuring that I'm curating that collection of what she's watching, but also I'm asking her questions about it. So I'm asking her, what did she remember from that episode, or what did she hear, what did she learn? So I'm reiterating what's happening while allowing her some screen time. And I know that I have friends too who've used like OutSchool as a source for having like some online Zoom school for children. I'm not opposed to any of that, but I think that it's really important that as caregivers, we really curate what's happening for them and really ask children just follow-up questions about what's happening there, so that we're still getting that back from them.
I think that's such a good point. I think about that for my son, right? I also, use those in moments where I need that break or for whatever reason, but have realized there might be some times where he says he wants to watch that one, and if I haven't watched it yet myself, I don't really know what themes might come up, right? Or if the characters are really kind to each other. And I know that's something someone in the chat box said, is being kind, right? So knowing that and curating it for your child, I really love that. One other thing that I would add to the person who's asking this question is that we know children learn language best when it's based on their point, right? So it's contingent responding. So in a conversation with your child, they're going to learn so much more language than what they learn from that screen. That doesn't mean screen time's all bad, right? They can learn other things, but if you're looking to build up their language skills, their conversation skills, that's going to come best with some back and forth with you. So the screen's never gonna replace you, for sure. And I appreciate hearing this is good advice. So this is helpful. Another person here asked about tools that can be used to really engage children. And Karina, I think you talked about some of these during your presentation. I believe the person who asked this question, Kenise, I think it was, has a 3-year-old. So this is very relevant for you. What are some of the activities you find that engage your daughter best to like keep her attention?
So that's a really great question, because I actually, one of the things that I appreciated of being home so much with my daughter was that I was able to watch her imagination kind of explode. So right in March, she was 2.5. So she was right at that age where, you know, a lot of that parallel play still takes place, but, you know, now she's going to expand that imagination, and it's taken off so much. So I think that open-ended materials that really don't necessarily have a finished end product of what you're supposed to do are the best things. One, to buy you time, but also just in general for really supporting children in their play. If they don't have a finished product or something that they're supposed to achieve with it, children are really using their imagination to grow and develop. So at that 3-year-old age, that's what we want to happen. And that's when we come in again of really supporting children, of asking them questions about what are you doing with that? What's your idea? What's your prediction? And using those big words. It's okay to expose children to big words. We want them to use them eventually. So it's okay to say, well, how are you going to construct that? And just using just rich vocabulary. That's a practice that I do here at Educare with the teachers, of not shying away from big words, but really using open-ended materials that you have at home and just seeing what children think about it.
Yes, I echo that from my 3-year-old. And like Play-Doh, tape, anything right that they can get their hands into, and the joy of those, right? Yeah, a box, right? I mean, I think the joy of some of those is what we heard from people on the chat earlier. A lot of people are here with older kids too, right? 7, 8 years old. I've seen that those sort of sensory hands-on materials can engage older ages. I enjoy it. I'm sitting and playing with that Play-Doh. So hopefully it works for the whole family as well.
For sure. And for those older kids, I would also just add that they can take those materials and make those games with rules that they like to do. So they can take it, they can create their own version of a game, and then they can assign the rules to the game, because developmentally, that's where they're at.
That's great. That's a great idea, right? Bring that up to their level. That's awesome. Well, I know that we are just at time. I'm going to close us out here by bringing up this screen to show you all one last opportunity to be involved with VOCEL, and to say thank you as well for participating. So let me click over here. There we go. So mention this at the beginning of the event. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, there we go. I mentioned this at the beginning. We have our early expression soiree coming up on October 15th at 6 p.m. It is VOCEL's annual fundraiser, and it is free to attend. There will be opportunities to donate once it's live, but completely free to attend. Great opportunity to hear from some parents who are in our programs, as well as some of our school partners and community partners. So if you're available on Thursday, October 15th at 6 p.m., Hannah put a link in the chat to sign up for that event. And then also, if you want to donate to VOCEL but aren't able to make it to that event, you can always text us, text VOCEL to 50155, or just go to our website, vocel.org/donate, and we appreciate support in any form. Even if it's just letting us know, maybe it's not monetary, but it's just letting us know that this was valuable, or engaging with us on social media. We are on Instagram and Facebook. It is VOCEL Kids, KIDS. So check us out there. A huge thank you to Karina for joining and spending part of your afternoon with us. And thank you to all of you for joining and spending a couple extra minutes with us past the half hour here. And we hope to keep in touch with you and hear from you soon. And thanks again, Karina.
Thank you.